for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Hi, Tom.
Good afternoon.
I will be seeing you again on Monday. I'm seeing way too much of you recently. You'll be coming in here again on Monday to talk about Dream City.
Yes. Today I'm the analyst, and on Monday I'll be the target.
Oh, I see.
So you can ask me any questions you like about the book.
Yes.
We're very proud of, Harry Jaffe and I are very proud of the fact that we've done an update to the 20-year-old Dream City book.
And that will be on Monday afternoon, so tune in for that. Joining us in studio is Heather Mizeur, Democratic candidate for governor of Maryland. She's a member of the Maryland House of Delegates, whose district is located in Montgomery County. Heather Mizeur, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kojo and Tom. Always great to be with you.
If you have questions or comments for Heather Mizeur, you can start calling now, 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org or send us a tweet at Kojo Show. Tom, what is the deal with the Silver Spring Transit Center? Now, apparently there's been a new agreement. There have been so many agreements, one loses track.
You know, I was looking at this. I went back. I think I have a timeline for the transit center.
Yes.
And it starts in October of 1993.
Thought it was 1893.
Well, it could be. I think they had horses planned for barn in the back. No, this is, if you were buying a house that was under construction, and there were so many problems, you would probably have some legal ability just to walk away, or you would have an inspection and say, this doesn't meet my standards, I'm walking away. But the county can't do that.
Nope.
And the bad thing is, this is such a needed facility. To transportation in the suburb is just getting to be horrific. It's already lost cause almost in Northern Virginia, and it's just really sad that they still cannot make sure that the concrete won't fall on the people coming through, the commuters. So maybe by the end of the year.
The new agreement is between Montgomery County and Metro. That Metro has agreed that there are safety concerns and it will work with Montgomery County on a repair plan to strengthen interior beams and girders prior to opening the facility. I said half jokingly in our billboard that they need somebody like the woman from Scandal, a fixer, who can make this thing look good in the final analysis, because Heather Mizeur, there's been so much bad information, well, good information about bad things about the Silver Spring Center, that I am sure that they're going to have a public relations problem when they open, with people going in there scared.
It's been a real challenge and concern. That particular facility is in my legislative district, and the new announcement that there'll be about $7 million more that will be pumped into the project, but we don't yet have agreement on who will pay for it. This is a project that's already $30 million over budget, and we're expecting the opening to be pushed back until 2015, and it's a real concern.
It definitely is a real concern. A concern for Delegate John Cardin is the Baltimore Sun reporting that this candidate for Maryland Attorney General, you remember that we had one of his rivals on last week, Delegate Aisha Braveboy. His other rival for that position is Senator Brian Frosh, the Baltimore Sun, reporting that John Cardin missed 121 out of 164 committee votes, nearly 75%. And apparently in the House of Delegates, committees are where the real work is done. So first you, Tom.
Well, the committee is where the real work is done, whether it's in Congress or city councils or anywhere. And it's embarrassing that they would have so many absences. Now, he put out a statement after the story. Initially, he didn't want to respond to it, but then put out a statement that, he had family obligations with his wife and child or children. And he unfortunately made the comment that we are not professional politicians, suggesting, but he is a professional politician. I mean, that's part of his job. And I understand the pull between family concerns and doing your job, but other people do that too, and they did miss 75% of the votes. So it's kind of a problem. And he said that here's his problem, if it is a problem. He has said he was spending the time with his family. Can't criticize him for that. But if someone somewhere pulls up a message that he was on a boat on the Chesapeake Bay, or he was in Philadelphia or in New York, or he was somewhere where he's missing votes because he wasn't with his family, that would be devastating for him.
And that someone somewhere is likely to be someone in your profession. Heather Mizeur, I don't know. Have you endorsed anyone in that race at all?
I have not. I'm a Democratic National Committee woman, and I am encouraged by the party not to pick sides in contested primaries.
But how important is committee work in general? as Tom has characterized it? Is that where the work really gets done?
Committee work is where a majority of the work gets done, and those committee.
Thank you for supporting me.
And those committee votes are important. It's part of the reason why I pushed for transparency in voting records for a long time.
But how
voters
difficult
only
it is.
could see how we voted on the floor, and now they have a chance to see what our voting record is in committee, because that's how important it is.
How difficult it is to do your committee work appropriately while campaigning for office?
Well, I think that is probably the other side to the story here. It is challenging. I know that I missed more committee votes this year than ever before. I had to make a decision on certain days. We tended in my committee to have votes stacked up on Friday afternoons, which were the one days that most of the rest of the General Assembly is off, and there were times where I had already agreed to do a tour through southern Maryland, and I was in 3 different counties in one afternoon and had to miss some votes. But I tried to be very careful about never missing a vote where my vote mattered in the outcome of an issue, or on any of the big budget issues that I was in charge of overseeing. It would be like votes on other members' bills that we were likely killing in committee. I would sometimes make a decision that my time was better spent doing work elsewhere, but it's a challenging balance. Although that percentage that you suggested it sounds pretty high.
People and journalists can kind of be fairly flippant about criticizing people in public life, but in fact, it's a very difficult balancing job for any number of things that you do, not just your personal life and the work there, but it's an extraordinary job when demands on your time.
It is. But it's such a blessing. It's a real honor to have the voters select you to represent them and be their voice in trying to make a difference in your community. And it's something I've been very honored to do for 8 years as a member of the Maryland General Assembly, and for 2 years before that serving on the City Council in Tacoma Park, and hopefully as the next governor of Maryland.
Well, Tom and I can assure you that when we run for office, that we will never miss doing this show, and we will unethically use it to ceaselessly promote our candidacy. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Our guest is Heather Mizeur. She's a Democratic candidate for governor of Maryland. She's a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. Her district is located in Montgomery County. If you have questions or comments for Heather Mizeur, please call us at 800-433-8850. You and the other 2 candidates running for the Democratic nomination debated on television on Wednesday night. You made it clear that you don't think this race should be about personal bickering, that it should be about leadership. Well, your 2 opponents both hold statewide offices. They have long resumes, but you said, and I'm quoting here, "Our ideas and our vision matter in this election, but our records of management matter even more. You want a governor with a successful track record of implementing health reforms, then I am that leader." What can you say about why you're better qualified to be a leader than they are?
Well, specifically on the examples I was suggesting in that answer on health care, one of the first bills I passed as a legislator was a bill to allow young adults to remain on their family health plans through age 25. It was first a provision that I had written in John Kerry's health reform plan. I spent a decade working on Capitol Hill, and for 4 years was with Senator John Kerry as his domestic policy director before, during, and after his presidential run, and had the opportunity to help craft his presidential health reform plan. We put in that package the idea of covering young adults on their family plans. And when I left his office to go run for and win a seat in the General Assembly, it was in part because I wanted to take these ideas of things that weren't getting done on Capitol Hill and show how we could get them done in Maryland. That's the first piece of legislation I pushed through, but I didn't just check the box and say, okay, I passed that one, let's go move to the next bill I want to pass. We have to focus on the unglamorous side of governing and actually making sure that the intended benefits of our work are connected with the people who we're trying to serve. I worked with college presidents across the state and sent package of materials asking them to share with their incoming cohort of students so that they knew about this new reform and opportunity. I reached out and talked to some large corporations who our state laws couldn't require them to do this because they were large self-funded plans, but we could encourage them to do it. Discovery Communications in downtown Silver Spring was one of the businesses that agreed to make that be one of their company policies. I worked with the state to take up the option for our state plan, knowing that county employees and their health plans are often pegged to the coverage that the state provides. So I worked really hard to make sure that this got implemented across the board in a successful way. Let's talk about our Kids First plan. There were 100,000 children.
Please make it as brief as possible because Tom Sherwood is about to interrupt you.
I found a unique way to enroll more children in health insurance in our state, and when we did that successfully, we got $120 million over the last 3 years in federal performance bonus grants because we hit our implementation targets. And this and a range of other experiences that I've had in actually not just passing legislation, but making sure that we follow through.
You rightly said in the debate Wednesday night, it was on NBC4 and other places, that you didn't want, when asked about the failure of the Affordable Care Act in Maryland, that you didn't want to spend time placing blame, but wanted to go forward and make. But before you can go forward, you have to understand what happened. Anthony Brown has acknowledged he didn't do what he was supposed to do. But what happened? Why was this? He was in charge. Why didn't this go forward? Doug Gansler, the other candidate for governor, has said Anthony Brown is lieutenant governor. This is his biggest job in state government life, and he failed. Do you think Lieutenant Governor Brown failed, or was he just part of a group of people who failed? And then I know you want to go forward, but I just want to make sure we understand where we are with this badly done law.
When we were heading into the legislative session this year, I came up with a list of things that I thought we could do to address the underlying problem. Some of my analysis of what had gone wrong was that there was a lack of transparency and accountability for the decisions that were being made, and working with the legislature and an oversight committee to keep us informed of progress. We were continually being told very minimal updates leading up to the flipping on the switch in October, and we were told as a general legislative body to expect Maryland to be the best state in the nation. We were going to implement this better than any other state. And unfortunately, we failed. The
governor was in charge of that.
We unfortunately failed that first test. And so I wanted to make sure that we came in and looked for the underlying problems of what went wrong so that we could fix it moving forward. And also along the way, I proposed additional opportunities for how we could get even more people enrolled. Maryland isn't taking up some options other states have used to make sure even more people get coverage, like allowing someone who enrolls in food stamps to automatically get enrolled in Medicaid. When you show that your income level qualifies you for food stamps, let's just go ahead and get you enrolled in Medicaid. And instead of making those families every 4 months recertify their income eligibility and kick them off coverage if their income goes up too high for a particular quarter, give them a year of coverage like everyone else. We look at our income over a year. If someone's a seasonal worker and they make more money in a few months, why should they lose health care for a few months? There's a lot we can do to be even better at getting more people health care, and that's what I'm focused on.
Income inequality is a huge problem in the country. The president has talked about it. It's certainly true. But I'm just trying to get, because you are running not against other people, you're running to be governor. But Anthony Brown wants to be governor. So when I asked about what's the difference between your management experience and his, do you not at least acknowledge that's a demerit for him, the way he handled it? I know you're trying to avoid criticizing him, but I'm trying to get you to do it. If you think he deserves some criticism without wasting all of your time about it, then maybe we could move on if you would just acknowledge that I'm right.
I thought that we start that. I thought we start the show with that premise on everything, Tom.
Because it is a big deal. I mean, Barbara Mikulski, who's a well-respected senator and senior senator, she endorsed Anthony Brown by praising the heck out of the health care.
I think that the voters, journalists, and others deserve to ask questions of accountability, but I think my personal opinion about this, as another candidate in the race, no matter what I say, will be viewed through a political lens, and I just want to stay focused on how we fix the problem.
Congressman John Delaney has publicly called for the state to move to the federal exchange rather than give it another go with technology adopted from Connecticut. What are your thoughts about that?
My concern about going to the federal exchange is that it's worked well and they got their kinks fixed for the commercial product. People who were enrolling in our state, the 4 commercial plans are Kaiser, Evergreen, United, and oh, I'm having a Rick Perry moment. There's a 4th plan. And those plans are, and when we hear about the failings of the exchange, it's often been with people trying to enroll in those plans. The federal government has done a good job of fixing that. But we have to keep in mind that this is an exchange platform, and our efforts here are also about having Medicaid be eligible to a lot more new low-income people. And the federal exchange has not worked so well in getting people with Medicaid coverage enrolled. And some of the advances that we have made in Maryland really have been on the Medicaid side, and we want to keep that going. I have remained open-minded to switching to the federal exchange, but I think that it's probably more likely, having looked at the analysis and sat in on some of the oversight committees, that the Connecticut model is a good opportunity for us. But we have to make sure that moving forward, that we put some of these controls in place so that we don't have a repeat of the previous problems.
I want to go to the phones now, so Tom, don your headsets, because Judy in Silver Spring, Maryland, in a way wants to contextualize what Tom Sherwood has been asking about. Judy, your turn.
Yes. Thank you very much. I listened to the debate the other night, and I'm very impressed with you, Ms. Mizeur. And I think I'm definitely going to vote for you.
Thank you, Judy.
I think I'm in the minority, however, because all the research tells us that the electorate tells you they want you to be positive, but they tend to listen only to the negative. And I think that making constructive criticism is different than you attacking your opponents. And I would like to see you make some constructive criticisms about your opponents, because otherwise I'm not sure you're going to get the attention of other people who appreciate your positive way of campaigning and
Judy, as I said, you contextualize Tom's remarks. Constructive criticism is all we're looking for. Heather Mizeur?
Well, when it comes to the issues, I have no problem drawing a contrast and a distinction on where our policies are very different priorities for our state. I came out with a plan to address the gender pay gap in our state.
And we have a caller who wants to know about that too.
And my proposal is to make sure that where the federal government has stalled, we pass a Paycheck Fairness Act in our state, because women are making 85 cents on the dollar on average to their male counterparts for the same jobs. If you're an African American or a Latino woman, the disparity is even more drastic, and it's really important for us to address this with urgency. After I put that plan, if I could just finish real quick, after I put that plan out, the Lieutenant Governor came out with his own remarks saying, you know what, we've done a pretty good job here in Maryland of addressing this. And by comparison to the national average of 77 cents, that is, I guess, in one way, a fair statement, but it fails to address the urgency that we're not done with this until there is no discrepancy, until we're at 100% of the same wages. And I was willing to make a very strong public statement in response to that on a range of issues of where we differ on standing up for income inequality, environmental issues. I will draw distinctions on policy
issues. So you make a
issues.
distinction between that and attacking or criticizing the Lieutenant Governor's performance on the rollout of health care?
Yes.
Okay. Tom?
Okay, well, another subject, talk about the minimum wage. The state passed a minimum wage increase from the $7.25 to $10.10 by 2018. The District of Columbia passed a $11.50 by 2016. Prince George's and Montgomery County passed I think it's 10 by 2017.
11.50 actually.
11.50. Okay, great. Well, there's a lot. Your view. What is your view on the minimum wage? You've talked about even a higher, a living wage. What would you do as governor to address the income inequality when it comes to the minimum wage? And I know you've talked also about tip workers who still don't get very much money.
I made it very clear during this legislative session that while I was proud to support the final bill that we put through on the minimum wage increase, that I had a lot of frustration that we waited until an election year to address wage stagnation, and that we did nothing to make sure that that ongoing crisis is averted. First of all, the next governor is going to be running for re-election before we even get to $10.10 an hour. I'm calling that for not just increasing the minimum wage, but getting us to a living wage of $16.70 an hour by 2022. Number two, we should be indexing the wage for inflation so that the cost of living doesn't eat away at that wage increase. And the third point is that we have way too many people who are tipped wage workers that are still stuck at $3.63 an hour. I've said that at a minimum we should raise that to have their wage be 70% of whatever minimum or living wage that we put in place.
Our guest is Heather Mizeur. She's a Democratic candidate for governor of Maryland. She's a member of the House of Delegates. Her district is located in Montgomery County, Maryland. You should know that we are live streaming this conversation with Heather Mizeur, so you can watch it on kojoshow.org. But if you'd actually like to talk with her, give us a call at 800-433-8850 or send email to kojo@wamu.org. Here is Wendy in Bethesda, Maryland. Wendy, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Delegate Mizeur. Thank you for doing such a great job on the debate Tuesday night. While you were speaking, I heard you talk about tax cuts for 90% of the families in the state. And you were the only candidate that did that and mentioned that for the middle class, so thank you. I was wondering if you can give us a little bit more detail about your plan to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the call, Wendy. By reference on all the issues that I talk about, you can find all the details on my website at my name, Heather Mizeur, MIZEUR.com. The tax policy is in our Jobs and Economic Development Plan. We, in this administration, allowed the millionaire's tax to expire and simultaneously raise taxes on middle class. And I'm trying to turn that around, Wendy. I want to bring back the millionaire's tax. It would generate about $112 million of additional income, and I would invest that in tax cuts for 90% of the rest of us. It's not a lot of money to start, but we know that every few $100s in the hands of middle-class families gets reinvested in our economy. We go to more restaurants, we buy school supplies for our kids or shoes and clothes. It gets immediately reinvested in our economy as an economic boost. And I couple my middle class tax relief with some meaningful tax relief for our small businesses as well, who are the job creators of our economy. And I have an economic vision that doesn't pit workers against small businesses. I have something for them both. Yes, we're going to ask you to pay higher wages, but we're also going to close a corporate tax loophole to put meaningful relief in the hands of small businesses who are creating these jobs.
May I ask about?
Please go ahead.
You have proposed and you support the legalization of marijuana, saying it could be like alcohol, taxed, benefit to the state. Other states, the District of Columbia, there's a hearing on Capitol Hill. There was this morning on the city's law simply to decriminalize it.
Which we just did in Maryland.
Right, you've just done in Maryland. And it won't take effect till, what, June 1st or something? When does it? Sometime around there.
Yes, I believe it was emergency legislation, if not June, October.
The NBC4I team looked at the substance abuse records in Maryland, said that since 2011, 50,000 people who have sought some type of medical treatment for substance abuse have cited marijuana, possibly other drugs at the same time. What do you expect to do, since Colorado is so new, we don't really know what's happening there in Washington, in terms of substance abuse? How do you balance that if you make this drug available? How do you balance the money the state will get and what you'll spend on substance abuse treatment and prevention?
when I came out with my marijuana legalization proposal in November, I also made it very clear that while it will take an election and a mandate from voters to create a change of thinking in Annapolis for legalization, we could get decriminalization done this year and stop entangling people's lives in the criminal justice system because of our failed policies on this war on drugs. Just by decriminalizing marijuana, we will save an estimated $280 million a year in the reduced incarceration, detention, and court cost associated with marijuana possession charges. We've been doing 23,000 of those a year, and that is a significant amount of revenue that I think we could start to rededicate towards substance abuse treatment. Now, if I indicate underlying the question is sort of the gateway drug question about marijuana.
Which Angela also Brooks has said, she said as a gateway drug.
There's a very interesting Institute of Medicine report that I read, because I didn't start out on the side of legalization when I first did my due diligence on this. I was open-minded, but I wanted to learn more. And as I did research on this, I found an Institute of Medicine report that discussed how it's actually marijuana's illegal status that makes it a gateway drug, because when people have to go to a drug dealer to get their marijuana, they're often what they call in the industry, they try to upsell you, right? Hey, I've got this other product I think you'd like better. Let me get you hooked on heroin, cocaine. I'm not sure what else they might be discussing, but it's part of the problem is its illegal nature, and that you can actually have a chance at improving access and keeping it out of the hands of youth.
Bring it out of the shadows.
Bring it out of the shadows, take that underground economy, bring it into the light of day, and have the state be in charge of regulating it.
Up on the Hill, I would say at this hearing this morning, there was some concerns expressed by members of Congress that, well, we have a lot of federal land in the district, and I believe there's some significant federal land in Maryland, and that what will the police do? I mean, a person who thinks he or she can be under the influence of marijuana and get very small penalties in Maryland, but if they happen to wander onto federal property, they'll still face criminal charges. And I'm not sure how the police are going to handle that.
Well, there is a what's called the Cole memo that the Obama administration has produced for states who are going down this road of legalization, to recognize that while the federal laws aren't changing, they're working to be collaborative with the states making their own choice for a different pathway on this.
Right. I think the police said they would have to arrest people, and then it would be up to the prosecutors whether to go forward.
Here's another aspect of that from Alex in Washington, D.C. Alex, your turn.
Yes, hi. I called in because the statistics supplied by the Centers for Disease Control in their 2010 survey said that of all the people who use illegal drugs in this country, the annual death rate was 28,000 something. The death rate from people using alcohol was 100,000, and the death rate of those people using cigarettes was 400,000. And the death rate from marijuana use was 0. So I think we need to restore a little bit of sanity and get some perspective on the use of...
Mizeur, what do you say?
Alex makes a very great point that I often am making in living rooms across the state as I'm explaining this policy and winning new support for this approach. It is on top of the differences in death. We know that in terms of its addictive nature, cigarettes are 32% addictive, alcohol is 14%, marijuana is 9%, and it's just become this cultural thing that we've made it into something to fear and question. Well, shouldn't we wait and see how those other states do it first? I just don't buy into the fear. I think that it's time for us to evolve on this issue and to get drug dealers out of this business, and for the state to get the revenue to invest in important things like a universal pre-K program, which I'm focused on, eliminating the achievement gap in our schools. It still matters in Maryland what your socioeconomic status is and what your race is to determine whether or not you're going to be successful in school. And we know it doesn't have to be that way if we invest in early childhood initiatives from 0 to 5, we can eliminate
Final
those
question,
disparities.
Tom.
And I know that you also, I don't think you said it now, but you said it before, and the same has been said in the district, is there is a racial discrimination pattern in the arrest for marijuana also, that African Americans, I think in the district, are 5 or 9 times more likely young people to be arrested for.
And in Maryland, it's 3 times. So it is,
so it's civil rights,
very
it's
much,
health, it's money, it's everything.
yes, it has been absolutely enforced with racial bias, and it's one of the reasons why we have to change
So you want
the
to
law.
end pot prohibition.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Heather Mizeur is a Democratic candidate for the governor of Maryland. She's a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. Her district is located in Montgomery County. Delegate Mizeur, thank you for joining us. Good luck to you.
Always a pleasure, Kojo. Tom, thank you.
When is the next debate? Do we know? When is the next televised debate?
Well,
It's
the
in
next
Baltimore,
the
no?
next agreed upon televised debate is June 2nd with Maryland Public Television. There was a question of whether or not there'll be a third televised debate that potentially is going to be on May 27th.
On the radio, at least.
And then there will be another one on the radio,
Right.
yes.
We'll be following them all. This is the Politics Hour. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom, what should Union Station be called? Should it be called Harry Truman Station? Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton seems to agree with the people who want to do that in the Senate. 2 senators have introduced legislation, or they're planning on introducing legislation to have it's timed to Truman's 130th birthday, which was this past week. So they have introduced such legislation, Senators McCaskill and Blunt, and they say that this station once housed the car that the presidential rail car which Truman used on his whistle stop campaign, and that when he left Washington from Union Station, 5,000 people showed up to say goodbye. There's a connection there between Truman and Union Station, and so we should name it. We've named the airport after former President Ronald Reagan. Of course, that's in Virginia.
Yes, it is. Well, I really love Union Station, and people aren't aware that it's about, in the next few years, it has to undergo an extraordinary makeover in the back. Now, I've forgotten, I was talking to the Downtown Business Improvement District. They were telling me that something like 20 million people or so pass through there now, and they expect in a very short period of time it's going to be up to 40 million. And so the train tracks are going to have to be changed, the buses, how Metro serves there. There's just an extraordinary rebuilding of Union Station, not the front facade or any of that historic part. So what should it be called? I love Union Station. I think that's a great name.
Can't they keep Union in the name, even if they
you can call it, it's like the Baltimore Washington International Airport. It's the Thurgood Marshall Baltimore Washington International Airport. And we could just name it the phone book because it has everyone's name on it. It's Harry Truman was a great president. It's a nice thing. It doesn't really affect the local Washington and what it's called. It'll just be one more name. We'll just say Union Station, like most people just say National Airport.
Let's ask Mary Cheh what she thinks.
Yes.
Union Truman. How does that sound?
Union Truman. That sounds pretty good.
It sounds like somebody's already doing decriminalized marijuana.
Mary Cheh joins us in studio. She's a member of the D.C. Council. She's a Democrat who represents Ward 3. She chairs the Council's Committee on Transportation and the Environment. If you have questions or comments for Mary Cheh, you can call us at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org. Before we go to Mary Cheh directly, Tom, there was something else I wanted to ask you about, and that I think has to do with the departure of the head of the Department of Human Services in the wake of all of the controversy. We had him on a few weeks ago. In the wake of all of the controversy we've had over homelessness in the district.
Well, this is part of this horrible situation that the council members brought us, where we had an election on
April 1st.
April 1st, where we have a lame duck mayor for 9 months.
I see Mary Cheh shrinking under the table.
I know, I'm staring at her as I say this. But here's the problem. The appointees, the cabinet members, the high-ranking folks, the very people who actually run the government, they are leaving. They have to find other jobs. Terry Bellamy of DDOT has left now. Nick Machette of the Consumer and Regulatory Affairs.
Because we know we're going to have a new mayor.
So this is a one-way door out. They know that the new mayor, whether it's David Catania or Muriel Bowser, will be appointing his or her own people. And so they have to start looking for jobs. There are a lot of nervous people. And so this is just one more. And the problem for this one is, of course, the mayor announced this grand plan to place 500 families in more permanent housing within 100 days, and this is the person who was supposed to do it.
You know, Mary Cheh, I've been reading about how Philadelphia has been reducing its homeless population with the help of private donors, but we're getting into that time of year when we stop talking about homeless people, when it starts getting warm and the summer comes around, and all of a sudden winter shows up and it's a crisis again.
Well, it's precisely now that we should be talking about it, and in fact we are talking about it because it's precisely now that it's the budget season. And there is a plan among council members to get together and to see what we can do in our handling of the budget to enhance whatever the mayor has done. The key thing, I think, first is to focus on preventing homelessness, of course, with emergency rent supplement and other actions, but then to address chronic homelessness. I'm quite convinced that we could address chronic homelessness. We have people who, if they were placed in permanent supportive housing, could actually do very well. And our families, in DC General, that's a travesty too. There's a way through this, and we can do it. And it's money, but it's also leveraging private funds, but we can do it, and I think there's a commitment to do it.
Well, how do you address, this is probably one of the largest, not in my backyard, NIMBY issues in the world. I think if somebody in the Washington Times several years ago wrote a column saying we should build subsidized public housing in Rock Creek Park, and people just, their heads blew
Exploded.
off. Where are you going to find the permanent housing, or at least semi-permanent housing, to get families stabilized by putting them in semi-stable places to live? Where are those going to be? What part of the city will those be?
Well, I don't think that we that's the problem. I think the problem is the resources and the commitment. I think
excuse me, I don't know of any in your Ward 3. You have the most wealthy ward in the city. I mean, I don't know how many houses are in Ward 3 for the homeless people.
Well, what we do is the Community Council for the Homeless at Friendship Place is very active and involved, and
but that's their office. They don't have any facilities there.
That's true, but they are actively involved with churches and other groups in Ward 3 and elsewhere. But what I wanted to say is I think maybe that's a kind of a false problem. This idea of huge housing projects where people are unhappy about them. I mean. The idea is, and you can see some of this beginning to take shape in New York, to identify vacant properties, to identify places where we could put up permanent supportive housing. It doesn't have to be ghettoized. And indeed, people do better when they are integrated in a community. So I don't see that as the problem. I see the problem more a matter of dedicating the resources and having the commitment to do this, and I think we can, and particularly with veterans, there's a great deal of federal money now to do that, and so I think if we marshal our forces, so to speak, that we could have a significant
The other problem you've been seeing is
result.
The other problem you've been seeing is how the city deals with transportation issues. You proposed.
This is a segue, I take it.
Oh yeah,
yes.
You noticed that? A month ago, you proposed completely restructuring the way we deal with transportation issues in DC. What exactly are you proposing to be done, and why do you feel it's necessary?
Well, I've been the chair of the Transportation Committee for a couple of years now, and I've seen how things have been working, and it occurred to me that, not that restructuring is a solution to many of the problems that I've seen, but it may enhance our ability to find solutions. There's a number of features of what I'm thinking of. And by the way, this is a proposal. It's not a final product. It's the beginning of the conversation. It's not the end of the conversation. We are going to have a hearing in June. Then we're going to have a whole bunch of working groups over the summer, and then another hearing in the fall. We're going to try to bring together experts and activists and all the rest of it to see, what makes sense. But the idea at the moment is, first of all, to give you some background, all of DDOT and the Department of the Environment, all of that was under the Department of Public Works about 12 years ago. And then there was an effort to separate it out, but it was all under that one umbrella. In any event, what I've seen from looking at this from the committee, one thing that we have as a problem is parking. One of the things I'd like to do is create an office or a department of parking management. Right now, we have 3 different agencies involved in parking issues. The Department of Transportation creates parking policy. The Department of DPW primarily does the tickets, not entirely, but primarily.
Ticket writing.
The ticket writing, right. And then the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, does the adjudication. That is a very unsatisfactory situation.
Yeah, people can be running around, so you're proposing to
Right.
create a new Department of Parking Management that would deal with all of that.
That's right, and they would take all of that under their wing. In terms of DDOT itself, we have expanded in the District of Columbia in an amazing way in terms of our transportation options. We're going to have, hopefully, I have my fingers crossed, in case people are just listening, get streetcar underway soon. But we have streetcar, we have the circulator, we have other forms of transit, buses, we have
New bike lanes.
pedestrians, we have bike lanes. You know, it's just really quite an amazing situation. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take from DDOT and create a transit authority.
So you would leave DDOT in place? You're not abolishing DDOT?
No.
You'd leave DDOT in place and you would create a new District Transit Authority.
Right.
That would do what?
That would have this umbrella overview of all of our transit options and be responsible for creating transit policy. DDOT would do what DDOT does best, which is actually pave the roads, put in the sidewalks, build the bridges, and take care of the infrastructure. And the ultimate goal here is to have a coordinated, comprehensive transit policy.
Would we have more government employees or fewer government employees under this
well,
scheme?
that's an interesting question. You know, just moving the chairs around might mean that you're just moving people in those chairs around,
Okay.
but you might have reductions in some places, but increases in others.
I should mention that this proposal would also dissolve the city's taxi cab commission.
Yes, that was my next point.
Yes.
The taxi commission is kind of this archaic creature that doesn't make a whole lot of sense now. What I'd like to do with the taxi cab commission is to take all of the registration and licensing that we do of taxi cabs and put that in the DMV. That's what the DMV does. We're going to take away ticket adjudication from them and let the DMV be the DMV and do motor vehicles, including taxis. But excuse me, I'm sorry. I just want to make that final point about this. Taxis are a form of transit. Taxis, Uber, sidecar, all the rest of that. So that ought to come under the heading of the Transit Authority.
Okay, Tom.
So, do we have a war on cars in this city or not?
I know that's often spoken about. What we have is
Everyone says that. To say it to you.
No, I hear it. I hear it a lot.
We'll have Middle East peace before we have peace between cyclists and cars.
No, I don't think that that's so. I think that we're in a period of transition. First of all, 40% of the people in the district don't even have a car. And second of all, more and more people want to have the option of not using their car, even if they have it. As the former director of planning used to say, most of the other people are car light. They have one car, which probably sits, outside of their house when they walk to work or take the subway or whatever it is they do. What we need to do, again, is to have education, cultural change, and experience with maybe this fancy word, but multimodal transportation.
Well, the city has, the council and the mayor, you have reduced the are you about to, or you have reduced the requirement to have garages sufficient to hold all the cars for the people who are working in buildings. Has that been reduced yet, or as part of the rezoning plan?
That's part of the rezoning plan. It's not finalized yet, but it's not garages. It would be parking spaces. They could be outside. They don't have to be inside.
There was tremendous.
Go ahead.
Okay. There was a tremendous, I think Mike DeBonis of the Post put it up, and I think down, there's a nice, great big map of Washington, D.C. from like 20-something years ago, and it shows all the surface parking, just oodles of surface parking. And now you look at the map today, there's virtually none. Even the building around the Wilson building, where the Reagan building is, that was a parking lot for 600,000 cars. We're losing parking space, and then other people say, why don't you synchronize the lights so we can speed through town? And I tell them, well, the city's policy is We're not going to synchronize the lights so you can speed out to Maryland or Virginia. These are people who live in these neighborhoods, and more people are living downtown in places. We're not going to make one-way streets for you to go out to the burbs.
Well, is this the bicyclist argument you're making here?
No, this is a commuters who everyone says, why don't they synchronize these lights so I can go down K Street at 40 miles an hour? I said, we don't want you to go.
But when you conflate that with the disappearance of parking, you seem to be making continuing to make the argument that this is a car-unfriendly environment.
That's what I'm saying. This is the basis for why people think there's a war on cars. But we have all these people coming to town. We don't have room if they all bring a car.
Well, but happily, they're not all bringing their cars. And you're right. They're saying, I've heard different projections between 1,000 and 1,200 net new people. And I think that, a month. And the demographic is largely young people who have so much education debt that they don't want to carry a car. They don't have a car to deal with. But in terms of parking, one of the statistics that I think is quite interesting is that 30% of the traffic downtown are people looking for a parking space. So we need to deal with that a little bit there with our idea about parking and sensors in parking spaces. You know how you go to these garages at BWI and they say there are 2 on the second level and 6 on the, that we could have sensors that could tell you where there are parking spaces. You know, we could do things that would ameliorate to some extent the parking issues.
The site Greater Washington that David Alpert runs asked the question that about this, under this proposed system, who's going to define the city's priorities and plans for its transportation networks? Which projects are prioritized on which streets? Would that be DDOT or the new?
That would be the Transit Authority.
That would be the District Transit Authority.
In other words, that's the conception at the moment. We'll have to see how this all unfolds. But I do think it's worth looking at how we've structured things and how we can make it better.
On taxi cab, what are the specific deficiencies in taxi regulation that you're aiming to solve with this reorganization proposal?
Well, first of all, it's the basic idea that taxis are not a thing apart. Taxis are a form of transport, and so how they function in the district should come under, a comprehensive transit policy. We've had issues with the Taxi Cab Commission in terms of their willingness to accept different forms of transit that are like taxis but different. For example, the app services like Uber.
Speaking of Uber, we got a tweet from Martin DeCara, our transportation reporter here, who's asking, why has Uber Taxi been allowed to operate outside DC taxi cab regulations while its competitors must follow those regulations?
Well, that wonderful question.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. In looking at the whole issue about taxis, when I inherited this committee, it became very clear to me that there's a reason why we regulate taxis to the extent that we do. And the basic dividing line with this kind of transit should be between street hails, people who hail the taxi on the street, and people who order it through an application process. With street hails, you have to have a regulated fare. You have to have other regulations because it's whoever comes by and picks you up. You can't haggle on the way to the airport. Well, I'll pay you $20, $25. You have to it has to be set and it has to be regulated, and it has to have a minimum level of service. In terms of the app services, you register with them. They do have regulation. It's not to the same extent because you are ordering them up, and so that is your choice. If you don't want to order them up, or if you don't want to accept what they say is the anticipated fare, you don't have to take it.
Can I ask about traffic?
Please do.
I've been in downtown traffic more times than I want to discuss, and I've talked again to the business leaders downtown. They say the city downtown is choking, and I don't understand why this city, something that could be done now without, well, why don't we have traffic control officers? When I drive through town in rush hour, I see occasionally one here or one there. There are no police officers now who are the friendly police officer helping direct traffic. But we have major intersections downtown, and it is gridlock every day. And, somehow or another we can clear the streets for the President of the United States, and we can have a cop on every corner for 2 miles. Somehow or another, that all gets worked out. But just for the hundreds of thousands of people who are our economy, and they're trying to get home, whether it's in the city or in the suburbs, they can't get through because the lights, there's no traffic control. We have all these don't block the box, don't do this, don't do that, but there's no enforcement. There's zero enforcement.
No,
why can't we have traffic control officers control traffic.
I think you're overstating the case.
No, I've been in it.
No, I've been in it too. And you know, when I leave the district building, I see traffic control officers at Pennsylvania and 14th. When I'm in the downtown area, I see them at various intersections on K Street. It's not that they are absent. Do we need more? Yes, we do, and I think that they would be very helpful. But I just want to say that I think your
may I ask a question?
statement is too broad.
I'm making a dramatic.
You got to let Bill in Washington get a question in because we only have 2 minutes left, and Bill has been waiting. Bill, your turn. We only have 2 minutes left.
Okay, thanks, Councilman Cheh. I appreciate your pressure on DDOT to protect pocket parks. DDOT has a new open space preservation and enhancement policy. Will you keep the pressure on them to reopen the pocket park at Tennessee and Constitution Northeast?
Oh, I know that part.
Well, I am absolutely committed to looking at this policy. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If we have parkland and DDOT doesn't want to handle it, I don't think the answer is to close it off to the public. I think the answer may be to transfer it to the Department of Parks and Recreation so that the public can use it. So yes, I'll be watching that.
Tom.
Well, I will go back to the traffic. You know,
Tom's has trouble in traffic.
I'll say that
apparently.
Marion Barry in the 80s, I think it was, he went to Logan Circle where 13th Street was one way in and one way out, depending on the rush hour. And he says, why don't we have these extra lanes carved through Logan Circle like there are in DuPont Circle? And he closed them and put the parks back. That makes the city more, and people have to go around Logan Circle. There are ways that things can be done, and 13th Street now is two-way all day long.
Only got 50 seconds left.
So can't we just be more aggressive in trying to stop the bottlenecks while you do all these hearings to change the policy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mary Cheh, she's a member of the D.C. Council. She's a Democrat who represents Ward 3 and chairs the Council's Committee on Transportation and the Environment.
She's unopposed.
Councilmember Cheh,
No.
Oh, you have a candidate?
Yes, there's someone on the Libertarian ticket.
Okay.
Well, in that case, good luck to you. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers, who apparently is really bothered by traffic downtown in Washington.
Apparently.
We can fix some things and make it better for everybody. And I'll be on your show Monday. I'll bring it up again.
No, we're going to get Tom his personal zip line.
That'll work. Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nandi.